Hello everybody, Max Wright here, and I'm going to share with you today some of my thoughts on what I believe Bitcoin's killer app is. Now the good news is, I believe we are only weeks, maybe months away from seeing this app come to fruition, and I think it's going to be a huge boon for the entire Bitcoin ecosystem and see Bitcoin really step up to its promise of being a significant player in world finance. So let me start with some thoughts about the Bitcoin space at present. I think most Bitcoin scholars would agree that Bitcoin's real potential and where it has the biggest impact is in the developing world. There are 2 billion people in the world who are unbanked, a further 2 billion who are underbanked, and those 4 billion people represent people who are locked out of 21st century and even 20th century financial products. And it's really holding those people back. It's locking them into poverty and significant hardships. So one of Bitcoin's big promise, something that, one of the reasons that I got involved in Bitcoin, because it has the potential to revolutionize that. It has the potential to bring 21st century banking products to those 4 billion people, and from there they will be able to lift themselves up out of poverty. And that's, I mean, you know, what more significant thing could there possibly be for Bitcoin? But we haven't seen, huge inroads in the developing world. In fact, we've seen far greater inroads for Bitcoin in the developed world. And, comparatively to the developing world, there's a lot less need for Bitcoin. So what are some of the reasons for that? Well, I would suggest that probably the primary reason for that is you have companies like BitPay and Coinbase and others which provide what we call Bitcoin merchant processing services. Now, there's a few different components to what they do, but I think one of the critical components that they do is they insulate businesses from Bitcoin's volatility. Now, it's true Bitcoin's volatility will reduce in time, but right now it is still, we can consider very volatile compared to, say, the US dollar. Or other thing, even given Swiss's recent 25% devaluation. But that statement is, as a generalization, is certainly true. Certainly from the merchant's perspective, selling a product for, say, $100 and your $100 turning into $75 the next day, not only can it obliterate all of your profit, it can send you down into actually selling products for a loss. And so companies like BitPay and Coinbase and so forth, they allow companies to accept Bitcoin. That money is immediately turned into fiat dollars, and those fiat dollars deposited into the bank accounts of those companies. So imagine the power of a Bitcoin wallet, relatively similar to what you guys are used to. You can accept Bitcoin, you can receive Bitcoin, it's got the QR codes, and it's a great merchant app. It's a great way to send and receive Bitcoin. However, there's an extra added feature in there. And that is the ability to convert some portion of your Bitcoins, either upon receipt or many other options there for the users, into some kind of stable cryptocurrency. Now, I want to be specific and clear here. We're not talking about going into a fiat currency which is going to rely on a banking system, or it's going to incur counterparty risk by definition, where somebody else is holding your fiat dollars to back up what we're talking about. We're not talking about that. Imagine a currency just like Bitcoin. It's based on the blockchain. It has no counterparty risk. Only the people with private keys can move the funds, so you're not at the whims of governments or institutions of any kind if you choose not to be. And you are completely secure in this digital currency. For all intents and purposes, it's just like Bitcoin, except that it is stable to a particular product in the real world, be it a US dollar, an ounce of gold, an ounce of silver, a barrel of oil, or whatever it is you choose to be, any other fiat currency in the world. That is the critical leap of technology that has taken place in the last 6 months. It's been tested and broadcast and used in a very specific narrow set, and it's now at a point where it's ready to be used in scale. And I think the union of this stable cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is what is going to be explosive for Bitcoin in the developing world. Now, if you're anything like me, I had all sorts of alarm bells going off in my mind the first time somebody told me that there was a stable cryptocurrency without any counterparty risk. I was just like, hang on a minute, this can't possibly be possible. It can't be economically sound. There must be some way where it's not securitized properly. Either the dollars have to be somewhere, in which case you're experiencing counterparty risk, or the dollars aren't there, in which case there's nothing backing this cryptocurrency, and it's just not economically sound. I totally understand what you're saying. That's exactly where I was. As a quick side note here, I have to just tell the story briefly that back in 2012, when I first heard about Bitcoin. I was a massive gold and silver bug. I considered myself very well educated on fiat currencies and economically sound money. And the only reason I started reading up about Bitcoin was to prove to my friend how silly it was and how it could never work. And after about a month or two of research, all my questions were answered, and I realized that this was the future. And you would think and hope that I got a little bit of humility out of that little experience. Sadly, I did not. And it turned out well for me again, because when somebody told me that there was a stable cryptocurrency with all the benefits of Bitcoin, however, they had no counterparty risk, but you could it would track the price of US dollar or gold or whatever it was. The only reason I decided to read about it was to prove to them that it couldn't actually be done. Well, exactly the same thing took place. After several months of research, all of my questions were answered. And I realized that I've discovered something for the second time in almost as many years, a little bit more now. It's been 3 years since I've learned about Bitcoin, that there is something revolutionary going on right here. And I think actually the union of these two products is going to be what really catapults cryptocurrency into its rightful place as a significant currency around the world. So I would like to share with you, if I can, the experience that I had about this cryptocurrency that tracks the price of the US dollar. Say, let's just use that as an example from now on. But as you'll understand as I go through, everything I'm saying is equally true for if you wanted to track gold or silver or any other prices out in the real world. So the name of this digital asset that operates just like a cryptocurrency that tracks the price of a real world asset is called a bit asset. And if we're talking about US dollars, we call it a bit USD. So I would like to take a few minutes now to explain that to you, because that's the revolutionary part. Without the understanding of that, and it all sounds a little bit wishy-washy. So now to understand how this works, we need to understand how futures markets work. And I recognize many people in the audience will already know how they work, but I'll just break it down quickly so that we're all on the same page. Let's take, for example, wheat. Let's say I felt that the price of wheat was going to go down and I wanted to profit from that fact. What would I do? Well, what I want to do is I want to sell at the price. So I want to sell wheat, which I don't have yet. I'm going to sell wheat, which I don't have at today's price. And then if my expectation is correct and the price lowers, then I buy wheat. So I've sold high and I've bought low and I've made a profit. But I've done it in a weird order. I've sold first before I bought, which means I never actually had any wheat to begin with. So how does that transaction work? How am I able to sell that which I don't have? Well, that occurs on the futures markets. And I should share that. What I'm about to explain, this futures markets, there's literally trillions of dollars worth of commodities being traded in the futures markets as we speak today. And so there's a very, very well-tested example of a marketplace. So a futures contract works like this. I believe that the price of wheat is going to go down, so I want to sell some wheat. So I'll go to the market and say, hey everybody, I promise to sell you some wheat at price X, and it will just be today's price of wheat. All right. Now somebody else on the other side of the equation, they might say, I think the price of wheat is going to go up. So what I want to do is I want to buy wheat now, knowing that I can sell it later at a higher price. So I agree to sell a bushel of wheat at today's price in the future sometime. Say this contract matures on the 1st of January. And somebody else on the other side of that equation says, well, I agree to buy wheat from you at that point in the future on the 1st of January at today's price. And at that point, a futures contract has sprung into existence. It's just a voluntary contract between two parties to purchase some commodity at some price. Now, what's really interesting to note here is that even though this is a wheat futures contract, there is absolutely no wheat anywhere in this transaction. I didn't even have the wheat in order to sell the wheat. But even if I did, you still wouldn't use it because the transportation and storage of wheat is very, very expensive. So how do these things work? The answer is, if I want to sell wheat, what I do is I send in to an exchange a certain amount of money, and they say, well, with that amount of money, we will permit you to sell X amount of wheat. And I've got that money as security. That's the collateral which allows me to sell wheat. Now, if the price of wheat goes up and down, there should always be enough money that I've sent in there to cover my obligations. If there is not, what will happen is I will do a margin call will happen on me, and they will close out my position. The exchange on my behalf will go and buy the wheat that I've already sold. I will have lost the money in between, but I'm no longer exposed to the market. So what that is, it is a wheat futures contract where the settlement instrument is US dollars. Let me say that again. There is a contract, and its price, so the valuation of that contract, its price fluctuates depending on the price of wheat. However, there's no wheat in the transaction. What there is there's US dollars, which is the securitization and settlement instrument of that futures contract. So now let's see if we can do something a little bit different. What if instead of having a contract that tracked the price of wheat that was settled in dollars, what if we had a contract that tracked the price of US dollars that was settled in a cryptocurrency? So how would a contract like that be formed? Well, like all contracts, it requires two voluntary parties to enter into that contract. So let's look at the motivations of why someone might do that. Let's say one gentleman, Bob, he believes that the price of this cryptocurrency is going to go up and he wants to leverage his position. He's already bought some of this cryptocurrency and he wants to buy even more. So he goes to the marketplace and says, "Hey, marketplace, could somebody please lend me $10 worth of this cryptocurrency because I want to ride the wave of this cryptocurrency's price going up. Now, for the privilege of borrowing these funds off of you, I'm going to pay you an interest rate. And to make sure that you have a lot of security in the deal, the cryptocurrency that you've lent me, I'm going to leave that on the exchange as security. And I'm also going to put in 200% more security of my own savings. So let's say you lend me $10 worth of security, that's going to go on the exchange. And let's say I'm going to put in another $20 worth of security. So there's $30 worth of security sitting on the exchange as your security backing up your $10 loan. Plus, don't forget, I'm going to give you an interest rate. Is there anybody that would take this deal? Let's say Alice is out in the marketplace. She hears this offer. And she thinks either cryptocurrency is going to go down or she doesn't particularly care about cryptocurrencies at all and just wants a place to store her dollars. She doesn't think the banks are very safe and she's not getting any interest there. So she thinks maybe taking this deal and accepting this interest rate is a pretty good deal considering there's some security there. Now, she does know that cryptocurrencies can be very volatile and go up and down, but she's comforted by the fact that there is 300% security protecting her note. And so she goes ahead and takes this deal. At that point, a futures contract is born, and that contract says that the person who owns this contract is entitled to exactly $10 US. Now, if you can let your imaginations run, what if there were set terms for these futures contracts, and there are literally thousands of Bobs and thousands of Alices entering into these contracts with the exact same terms? Those futures contracts would be fungible, easily interchangeable, everyone would know what they are, and you could use them freely as currency. Now, let's say that they were divisible. We just gave that an example where a person created a $10 futures contract when they entered into a contract with somebody and $30 of security was put in the exchange. Well, what if you wanted to go and buy a cup of coffee with your $10 future contract and you could give them, the cup of coffee cost $2.50, you gave them $2.50 of a futures contract and you received $7.50 back. This is the exact same way that trillions of dollars of futures contracts are formed in the traditional or legacy markets. What they are is, for example, it's a wheat futures contract settled in dollars. What we've created is a dollars futures contract settled in cryptocurrency. Now, there's a really, really amazing thing that can happen as a result of that. When the settlement instrument is dollars, there has to be some kind of an exchange, some kind of company, some kind of service where those dollars are held, and that of course gives you counterparty risk. However, cryptocurrency is digital money. It's programmable money. So because this is all on an open source blockchain, it's cryptographically provable, and you can see in real time the exact security sitting on the blockchain underwriting all of these futures contracts. So you can go and see when the contract is formed for the $10 US, when that contract is formed, there's $30 sitting on the blockchain as security. But as time goes on, the price moves up and down. So maybe there's $35 of security sitting on the blockchain for this contract. And maybe that goes down to $25 if the price goes the other way. In this particular exchange that I'm talking about, the margin calls occur at 200%. So if the security behind underwriting that $10 gets to $20, what happens is that the blockchain actually goes and closes out the person's position and they lose a portion of their funds and some are returned. But the person who holds the futures contracts is always protected. So you would now have a digital asset that's perfectly fungible, perfectly divisible. It sits on a blockchain. There's no counterparty risk, and it tracks real world assets like the US dollar or gold, silver, or anything else that you choose, because there's a free market where anybody can form contracts with anybody else to create these digital assets. Now, there's no doubt that this is a huge topic. It actually reminds me a lot of when I first got involved in Bitcoin back in 2012. There was not a lot of great material out there explaining things. It was like cryptography. I don't know much about that at the time. Understanding blockchain technology was very, very difficult then. But when the innovators got through it and then they started refining the way they could explain it and sharing it with people, all of a sudden it turned into the gigantic industry that it is today. And I think this is going to follow a very, very similar path. Now, I should mention all of this stuff is not theory. It's all working and it exists. You may have heard of it. The decentralized exchange that manages all of this, the futures contracts, the collateralization, the margin calls, that whole process, that is all done on a blockchain. That blockchain is called BitShares. And the futures contracts, those digital assets that track real world prices, are called BitUSD, BitGold, BitSilver. And right now you can go and see, and it's been this way for many months, there is hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, at times it's gone up to millions of dollars worth of digital assets that are being traded by the blockchain with zero counterparty risk. So this is here, it's working, and the tools are being built now. Very similar to the Bitcoin protocol. The Bitcoin protocol got built, and entrepreneurs come in and start building on top of that protocol, and that's when the masses can come in and start using these products. That's when they become really powerful. BitShares is in exactly the same phase. The technology is built, the exchange is working. To use it is clumsy. It's a little bit difficult, although it's getting better all the time. But as I say, hundreds of thousands of dollars of these digital assets are in circulation on this decentralized exchange. So back in 2012, when I first discovered Bitcoin, I noticed that there was not a great deal of material out there to help explain Bitcoin and how it worked. I actually wrote a book. It was called The Bitcoin Revolution: Ending Tyranny for Fun and Profit. And it was one of the top sellers and top ranked books on Amazon for most of 2013. Well, I think BitShares is in a really similar situation. It is relatively new. The technology is there. It is proven to work, and it is an incredible technological leap. It still needs the coders and the developers to increase the quality of the tools to make it more user-friendly. It still needs the entrepreneurs to build the businesses, and it still needs the evangelists to get the message out there. And that's why I wrote this book. It's called BitShares 101, and it goes through the entire BitShares blockchain. It fully explains how digital assets work, futures contracts, and it's actually a really small book. It's only 66 pages. It's available on Amazon.com. And it's a really important read for any innovators out there who want to get involved, because the BitShares project, as I said earlier, I think these digital assets that track the world of real world currency with no counterparty risk is the absolutely perfect union with Bitcoin. And that's the union of these two things that is going to massively explode Bitcoin, and it's going to be Bitcoin's killer app. I think when there's basically a decentralized BitPay for the developing world, where they can accept Bitcoin, transfer it into stable currencies, and then easily transfer back into Bitcoin whenever they need to get out, when this whole process is seamless, done in a single app, and done without any counterparty risk. Which is, that's one of the most important things for the developing world. They are so corrupt. Even if you have, exchanges there that aren't corrupt, governments can come in, banks can come in and do all sorts of funny business. And it's the possibility of owning the private keys to both your fiat or your futures contracts, as well as your cryptocurrency, is going to be really, really important for that developing world. So I think, this is where Bitcoin's killer app is. Now, the good news is, as I said, the difficult part, the protocol, the decentralized exchange, the futures contract, it's all built, it's all working, it's there. The hard parts are done. All that's missing is that the entrepreneurs coming in to build on top of that and make it a really easy app for users to do. And I'm already aware of 2 different teams building this, what I think is Bitcoin's killer app. But the Bitcoin community should be really excited about this, and they should look forward to these apps coming out in weeks or months, but definitely not years. We're talking about 1 to 4 months, and I think you'll see these apps out and available for distribution. Or again, the third world, developing world, is where it's really going to be. If you want to keep up to date with any of this information, I have a Twitter handle, BitShares TV, Facebook and YouTube channels by the same name, and a URL, bitshares.tv. Please just go there and sign up, register, follow, do whatever it is you've got to do. But keep in contact with this mission, because it's revolutionary, and it's very, very exciting, and I think it's the critical component to Bitcoin taking its rightful place as the reserve currency of the internet and becoming a huge international player. So that's my talk, and thank you very much.
I really hope you enjoyed this BitShares.tv video. If you want to help BitShares achieve its mission of securing life, liberty and property for all, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. Share it on social media like Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe to this channel to get all the future updates. If you are new to BitShares, you might want to check out the BitShares 101 series by clicking the thumbnail below me. It walks you through all the basics, including how to get started by downloading your free wallet and creating a free account. Or you can check out our featured topic. See you in the next video.